Okay, back to our subject matter of the day, the Benue robbery. We have Tony Ofoyetan still in studio here, and Dr. Kabiru Adamu, who's joining us remotely, MD Beacon Consulting from Abuja. Okay, we've heard about the modus operandi. It's a mixture, really. They went with heavy-duty equipment. It was, any way you look at it, this was not your usual run-of-the-mill criminal bandit robbery. They were even mixing up tactics. We've heard of the surveillance that must necessarily have gone before this, and even there were reports that they were spewing cash. By the way, no figure has been given yet as to what they made away with, but they were spewing cash along the way to sort of cause the kind of confusion that you sometimes get. Going back again to the matter of, were these robbers or were these terrorists? We don't want to belabor the point because we have suffered too much. People should remember that we lost a DPO, we lost 3 female police officers, bystanders, customers, and all of that kind of a thing. But their tactics certainly were, would you agree, we're looking a bit more like a mixture, a cross between terrorism and banditry?
Again, I don't want to fall into the prey of what I would call pedestrian analysis. Their modus operandi tells me they are organized. Now, it is their motive that would determine whether they are common criminals, I'm using that word loosely, or that they are terrorists. Since we do not yet know what their motive is, I would just leave it to say.
Sorry, Kabir, could you speak up a bit? Sorry about that.
Okay, I was saying that what is clear is that they are organized.
Okay.
What we've seen from both the footage and then the information we've gathered from people on ground and from, of course, security forces tells us that they are organized. What we don't yet know is their motive. Now, if the motive is purely criminal and financial, it could just be that. If, however, the purpose of obtaining the funds that they obtained is to now go and use it for a terrorist purpose, then that makes them a terrorist group. So because we don't know the answers to this, I'll just leave it as saying that they are an organized group. Whether that organized group is one that is purely just criminal or one that is terroristic, only time would tell.
And the authorities have not given up any information. Is that standard practice as to the kind of loot they got away with?
No, it is definitely not standard practice. Time would not allow us to go into the forensic analysis of what really happened. But like Tony mentioned at the beginning, I'm almost certain I can put my money on it, that in all of those banks, there were police personnel deployed there. This is standard practice in most Nigerian banks. That's number one. Number two, there is a level of security, that's corporate security deployment within those banks. I don't think there's any bank in Nigeria that does not have corporate security deployment. By that corporate, I mean private security practitioners. The third element is the fact that all banks have standard operating procedures with regards to the kind of funds that are in their possession, either in terms of liquid funds or funds that are in transition. So it's very easy, for instance, within hours to be able to determine what was actually accessed, and then, of course, the quantum of what was accessed, and which will give us an indication of the types of funds that are in the hands of these criminals, wherever they are. Okay. And I think in the spirit of transparency, the security agencies should have put forward something out there. More importantly, it's important to carry the people along. And I must say that this is something that is in the Renewed Hope document. The government has said that they want to win the hearts and minds of the people. So strategic communication of the type that we're discussing by the security agencies, stating what happened, even putting the pictures of the person. There were CCTV footages. They can clearly identify the faces of some of these criminals, put it out there, ask people to supply information. That's the type of engagement that we expect to see.
Excellent. Ada in Jos, good morning.
Good morning, Fayeri. Good morning to your guests, Dr. Tony and Dr. Kabiru. It's, I don't know, calling from Jos State. I don't know. When some people get surprised when such attacks happen, I used to wonder whether are they not in Nigeria. It has been happening now, even in other states. You know, we keep on waiting for it to happen until we take a look at our security architecture. We're not getting anywhere, you know. So the police, they are not well equipped. Yeah, but this one now that happened in Benue, my happiness is that even though we lost the DPO and some other people, but my happiness is that they are able to gun down two of the
robbers.
and then they are able to now make some arrests as well. You know, so maybe that will help. But until we see security as something that is a national issue, and then tackle it from that point of view, allow this idea of being hypocritical, saying that they established different security apparatus that some governors have put in place, like Ofoyetan and the rest of them. They are not allowed to bear security arms. When all these bandits or the terrorists are wearing very sophisticated arms, that's the problem. So if that has been allowed, like the hunters, the vigilantes, the one that happened in that venue, it would have happened that way. You know, it would happen that manner. But so long as we don't do that, we are in trouble. You go to the bank, even as a customer, you're in trouble. You go to the market, you're not safe. You go to the hospital, you're not safe. Where is safe? That even in your own home. You know, let the government of the day address this thing, squarely. You know, let them address it.
All right.
Allow the people that they have allowed to secure bear sophisticated arms. Even the vigilantes, the hunters, once they are trained, let them do that. Let it start from the local government. Most crimes are local. You know, that's why we're having this issue we're having, you know. And then again, address also from a economic viewpoint. There's a lot of hunger in the land, you know, so that can also, I'm not saying that people should take up arms because of that.
Exactly.
But also,
exactly.
You know,
it's good you clarify that.
Let's all give on Nigeria.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ada. Tony, would you like to pick up on, what Kabiru, left up on the forensic aspect? The fact that we don't have an he spoke about, one, there's the forensic aspect, then there's the whole matter of transparency. We don't have any indication of what the loot was from all of those banks, 4 or 5 of them, about 5 banks that were reportedly hit. Then again, the whole matter, and again, one cannot but go to foreign jurisdictions for comparison. This kind of a thing happens, you have digitally enhanced pictures, because there were social media pictures out there in the public. None of this has been done. Is it that we're still under shock, or that we are limited in our forensic capabilities? What are your thoughts there?
I think my first response or reaction is, somebody said the thieves that are outside government are more than the ones that are in government. In other words, the ones that are ready to steal are even more than the ones that are stealing, as it were. Now, if I go by that analogy,
where you immediately have pictures enhanced.
In those days, even though they have bloated many a times, when there was bank robbery in those days, within 24 hours, you would have had we lost 10 million, 2 million, 3 million, and all those stuff like that. But basically, that is even the problem of the bank. The main problem I would have is when the bank is now going to ask the customer in that banking premise, you understand, to exclude themselves from liability of the money that was taken from customer in the banking premises. They are liable. Any amount taken from customer in that banking premises, at that point in time, you are bound to pay.
The bank is liable.
Yes, you are bound to pay. Because you owe the customer the duty of care to make sure that he's safe and secured in your premises.
Oh, so there is such a rule. Not many Nigerians knew that.
It's a legitimate public of that customer as at that point in time. So that is for the whatever. But you see, it is not impossible to identify these criminals, to put them on the pages of newspaper. That's not the problem. The problem is that as good as you have a mark on a calabash, it is when you see the calabash you will identify the mark. These people, you are talking about daredevil armed robbers. There are communities as we speak today that terrorists are staying in those communities. They are eating, they are doing everything. The villagers dare not talk, but they know they are terrorists.
Okay.
They know.
But still, why are these things not being put out?
If they talk,
why is that sort of pictorial information not being put out? As I was saying, maybe I'm asking for too much. Digitally enhanced, blown up photos from these amateur videos.
Who will go and report? I've seen this man on page of newspaper on social media. I know he stays in this house.
But
is it me that will go and tell police that please, this man that you advertise, he stays in this place? Understanding antecedent of how a lot of people that have passed through that route and communities have been sacked and wiped out. So at the end of the day, you see, Uncle Yori.
So that's why they're not putting out the
Uncle
information.
Yori,
it's one thing to put it out, it's another thing for people to be too scared to help.
Uncle Yori, the police formation needs to do a proper reorientation, re-auditing, reformation, restructure, to be able to harness the confidence of its citizens. When you say police is your friend, make it a true friend of the people.
Okay, let me, Mazio Korafo, thank you for holding on all that while. Good morning to you, sir. Go ahead now.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, you see, this issue of bank robbery is not a new story. 70s, 80s, that was what Nigeria was at early 90s. Now, I was expecting the bank, the CCTV that's supposed to, is what they call to get one that you use GSM or Android phone to monitor. For banks to tell us stories to make sense. Now, like what our guest rightly said, as long as somebody is inside the premises, they close their gates, that they will not bring in new people. That those within the bank now will pay their money because of their time, maybe because they said it happened around 4 or 5. The bank normally maybe 3 or 4 people are already there. It is that if somebody said he came with 1 million, the bank was paying him or her. There's no two ways about it. But the question is this: if the bank authority are serious with what they are doing, the money they make in terms of profit, there is no how armed robbers will come to the bank and operate within just for good 1 hour neatly. Nobody stop them. And these are obvious. I think whether there are 3 banks or 5 banks that is operated, which is not healthy within 1 hour. Now, what happens to the security network of their bank officers? It doesn't mean that everybody has just concentrated. Now, some of those people that were killed. That is why I used to tell the police that if you are on duty at any point at time, you have to be combatant ready for anything, even their own personal security. They improve. Combatant ready 247 till everybody disappears from the banking premises or within the environment. That is. But the thing that the laxities we have in terms of employment situation, in terms of local place, is always a problem. And before anything happens, there must be an insider. As far as I'm concerned, take me to anywhere and bring to the further. There must be an insider in all these banks and operation. Thank God for the man that saw those people at the policeman that gunned down the young man that was the armed robber that was on the train. Now tell me, if the armed robber that was the train was a marksman, all those who are the take them. That is it. So the thing that some of these boys are going to, they are all amateur. You know that because somebody has said them, come, boy, let's go, operation for Christian. And the bank authorities should be very careful. Anything that has to do with ember modes, you should what we call 247 security, no showing back.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much, Mazi Okoropa. I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but coming back, Kabiru, I still am not happy personally, maybe it's because I don't know too much, that we haven't got an estimate of what between all of those banks, even if it is a rough estimate, that can be updated later. And you spoke about the importance of transparency in all of this. Even if the banks were initially, the system was shocked that as of Monday morning, we don't have an estimate of what they made away with. And I take the explanations that Tony has given, but I also want your commentary on that. The fact that we don't have photos out there now, considering all the photos that are available on social media, I don't know. I know that we're doing our best and that we've been shocked, but surely this shows all of the areas in which improvements can be made as we go forward.
And I agree totally. And this is why, in the spirit of the period that we're in, and with a high sense of responsibility, I will speak directly to the leadership, especially in the presidency. We cannot continue with what we did in the past and think that there will be a change. I did mention that in the Renewed Hope agenda, there are beautiful policies. I mentioned them earlier on, and there is so much more that is mentioned in that document. But we cannot use the modus operandi that we used before now to achieve the objectives of those policies. And so I speak directly to the National Security Advisor, to the Minister of Police Affairs, to the Minister of Defense, and to the Minister of Interior. Our security deployment, I know Tony mentioned the police, but I think it's a little bit beyond the police. Our security deployment should follow 4 principal layers. The layer to deny, the layer to detect first, that there is the propensity to attack, which is principally intelligence. And under intelligence, you have different elements. The CCTV comes in, human intelligence, technical intelligence, name them. But that ability to detect that an enemy is going to attack you. Now, you can't stop that enemy from attacking you. So even when you have the capacity to detect, you must do the next thing, which is the ability to deny. The person would attempt to attack. You should have enough capability to be able to stop that enemy. The third one is the ability to delay, which leads us to the fourth one, which is the ability to respond. And then, of course, you can add a fifth one, which is the recovery process. Now, in simple 101 of security, this is what we need to do going forward. Now, why am I answering your question in this regard? It is because we can approach this thing from a piecemeal level. And in my honest opinion, and I'm sure Tony will agree with me, the challenge we have with our security architecture at the moment is that it is not arranged in the manner that I spoke about. Yeah. You can go and buy security if you are a parliamentarian, if you are holding a political office, but for you and I, nobody bothers about these 5 layers of security that I've mentioned. So going forward, I'm hoping that these 4 principal persons that I've mentioned will sit together in a room and ask themselves, how do they achieve the deployment of security along these 4 or 5 layers that I mentioned, so that the woman in the village in Ondo State who is feeling vulnerable to the activities of these non-state armed groups and the capacity of these non-state armed groups to challenge the supremacy of the use of this force by the state is stopped almost immediately. It's only when we do it along this line that we would achieve that. And it's not as simple as I say it, because there are several elements under each of the 5 components that I mentioned that we need to, as a state, be able to achieve.
All right, then. I want to thank you very much, Dr. Kabiru Adamu, MD, Beacon Consulting Limited, for making time for us this morning. Thank you very much for your insights on this subject matter. Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
Indeed. And back to studio now. Well, Tony, what can one expect going forward now? We've been surprised, and you've spoken about security, the intelligence that might not have been well utilized and all of that kind of a thing. We don't want to be, shame on us if we are surprised another time. What do we now expect, especially in the banks, now that we've seen that, we never were thinking of this kind of a thing. Now they've gone and done this. Well, do you expect that there's going to be a new sort of mentality in the banks, whether it is in Lagos, whether it is in Kamura, Noda, or whatever?
Well, for me, I'm not expecting too much of it in the banks because even presently, bank robbery has reduced. So I'm not expecting an increase in that, but it was just a statement-making operation. And it was more or less, I'm not expecting that it to be a continuous operation. But for
can we take any chances?
Yes, we can take the chances, except for the fact that in Benue State, they also allow for such vulnerability.
Okay.
It's not going to be easy in cities like Lagos and all those. But the main thing here is the government should look at the possibility of withdrawing every form of support from non-state actors. Every form of support, I mean it, every form of support from non-state actors, because you cannot sustain non-state actors. And the day you don't sustain them, they become a pest.
Okay.
You can never sustain non-state actors for life.
Well, that's something of intelligence, isn't it? Government doesn't level with you how much they are really dead with non-state actors.
Many a times, in an attempt to say you want to use them either for field intelligence, field operation, one-off operation, and the like, You see them having the effrontery to bear arms and all those stuff like that.
Okay.
And before you know what is happening, they are so powerful, they become big militia in each of their states and territories and jurisdiction.
Well,
and I think the government should also revisit the issue of state policing. Our rural security should have its own special force.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we're going to have to leave it there, Tony. Thank you very much. DG, International Institute of Professional Security and Security Analyst. Thank you very much, as always.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our pleasure.